there, Ken. Glad you enjoyed the first lesson yesterday. We just read chapter 1 in class just a few minutes ago, and we're going to discuss chapter 1. I've got plenty of notes for them to take as well. Just a quick review what we talked about yesterday. The setting of this book is the Great Depression, and it's in Alabama. It's in the South. Three relationships that are very strong in this story: political relationship, class relationship, social relationship. Political means who has power, who doesn't. Class means the friction between upper, middle, lower classes. And then social is how people deal with their neighbors, a neighbor being anyone else in the world other than your family. All right. We talked about the separate but equal. We talked about this book being basically about racism. We talked about the word segregation and what it means, and we talked about the Jim Crow laws as well. All right. I want to, I tried to record this yesterday, but I actually ran out of space on my disk, and I didn't get it posted yesterday. But I want to look at the very beginning of this book, the very first sentence of the book, and it reads, when I get to it, when he was nearly 13, my brother Jim got his arm badly broken at the elbow. All right, that sentence is a bookend to this entire story. Jim breaks his arm, and at the very end of this story, we find what that meant and why it was important, and why the author started the story with this. It serves an important part in this story. Also, if you look in the second paragraph, I'll just read the entire paragraph. When enough years had gone by to enable us to look back on them, we sometimes discussed the events leading to his accident. I maintain that the Yule started it all, but Jim, who was 4 years older than me, said it started long before that. He said it began the summer Dill came to us, when Dill first gave us the idea of making Boo Radley come out. So another part, bookends to this, is Boo Radley coming out. And we read in chapter 1 today what that means. It means coming out of a house. He'd been locked up in a house for 15 years. Boo Radley coming out. And at the very end of the story, it's actually at the place where Jim breaks his arm, we understand what Boo Radley coming out means. All right? So these are the beginning and ending areas of this book. Okay? Everybody got this? Yeah, we did this yesterday. All right. Next thing I want you to do, and I want you guys to, I want you to draw this, just like I'm drawing it. This story, what does every story need? What does every story in literature need in order for it to be a real story? Yes, sir?
A problem.
Yeah, very good. A problem or a conflict we use in literary terms, but you're right, you're right. A problem's a fine word for conflict. You need a conflict. And what do we call it when the conflict is taken care of? What part of the story is that called?
Resolution.
The resolution, right. This story has, who knows what the most exciting, intense part of the story is called? The climax, right. This particular story actually has two climaxes to it. And they're separate from each other. There's a good distance between the first and the second one. All right. We have three people: Atticus Finch, and we have this guy named Tom Robinson, who we have not met yet, and we have Bob Ewell, and they have their paths intersect. And this is the first climax of the story. And this happens in the courtroom. climax number 1. All right, climax number 2, it's basically the same drawing, it's just different people. You have Atticus, well, that's not even true. You have the Finch family, Finches, and you have Bob Ewell, and you have Boo Radley. And where their lives intersect, where their paths intersect, is the second and final climax to the story. And I'm not going to tell you where it happens, because that'd give part of the story away. All right, so there's 2 climaxes to this story. And the first part of the story, which we just started reading today, really focuses upon this part here. And then the second climax, after the courtroom stuff, then you've got the second climax here. All right, so the first part is Atticus Finch, Tom Robinson, and Bob Ewell, and their paths, their lives intersect in a courtroom. And then later in the book, the end of the book, you have the Finches. When I say Finches, I mean the Finch family. And then Bob Ewell and Boo Radley, and their lives intersect somewhere as well. All right. I talked to you guys yesterday about the perspective that this book is written at. This was being told by a girl who was 6 years old at the time all this happened. All right, and her brother is only 10, and then they got the character named Dill, which we encountered him today as well, and he's 6 as well, almost 7. And so a lot of the story is being told through the eyes of children, and you've got to understand, like what we read today. Jim had this idea of who Boo Radley is. 6.5 feet tall. He's got fangs, and he's ugly, and he catches and eats raw squirrels and raw cats, and he's got a big scar across his face. All right, that part you have to take with a grain of salt because it's being told from their perspective. All right, now the Girl Scout, her name is Scout. She's telling this story years later, but she's trying to tell it as best she can remember it and the things that went through her head. I want you guys to make a list, start a list here, and the things that I write about these, I want you to go ahead and write this down as well. All right, the main characters in the story that we're concerned about with now, this girl named Scout. Okay, she's the narrator of the story. She's 6 years old at the beginning of this story. I think she's 8 at the end. Okay? So she's the narrator, and it's being told through her eyes what she remembers and the way things were. You have this character named Jim, J-E-M, and he is Scout's brother. He's 10 years old. She's 6 at the beginning of the story. And he's 10 years old. All right. And then you have their dad, and his name is Atticus. Neither Jim nor Scout call him Dad. They both call him Atticus. I do not know why. It's just that that's what he allowed them to do, and it apparently doesn't bother him. It didn't bother him at all. So he allows them to call him Atticus. A little bit of erasing here. Okay. All right. Now, Jim and Scout are, for lack of a better term, they're orphans. They're living with their dad, but their mother died 4 years ago at the start of this book. So Scout has lived all of her life. She doesn't even remember her mother, according to the book. Obviously, Jim does. He still remembers things about her. Atticus was 15 years older than his wife. So he was a middle-aged man when he married. We're going to find out in reading, upcoming reading, he's about 50 years old right now. Okay? So he was in his 40s when Scout was born, about 44, and he was about 40 years old when Jim was born. So he got a late start on life. She died of a heart attack. All right? The next person is Calpurnia. All right? And the story tells us that she is the cook. But she is actually much more than that. She has a special place in society. Calpurnia is a black woman.
I was just surprised that she like spit at that dead guy. I was like, they're
Yes.
literally gonna like kick you out. I'm like,
Right.
But I feel like whenever the way that Scout was talking about her, like I feel like it's not like a slave type way that they had her. It's like
family.
Okay, that's a good, all right, that was actually a good observation. I didn't want to get ahead of this. She is Calpurnia is a black woman, but she has a special place in society. And I'll just, hold on, let me write this. And this is why. She is not just the cook at the home. She is essentially Scout's and Jim's mother. Okay? She has a position that very few, if any, other black women had in the South, you know, at this time. Atticus treated her like Calpurnia, like she was a family member. You remember the chart that I brought up yesterday? Oops. The chart that I brought up yesterday, this one here. Remember the way society was set up? You know, you had the upper class, the town folks, the middle class, the farmers, the lower class, people like the Yules. And then the imaginary line that separated, you know, segregated the whites from the blacks. And remember what I told you yesterday? At no time could a black person cross this imaginary line to consider themselves equal with any of the whites. And at no time would any of the white people cross the line and let a black person consider themselves as an equal to them, to the white people. However, what I just wrote here, and where did my page go? Oh, there I was, right there. All right, what I just wrote here, I said that, you know, Calpurnia, even though she's the cook, she has a very special place in society. Atticus does something that no one else in town does. He treats a black person as an equal. He treats her as his equal. He allows her all the privileges that a mother would have in raising the children. Calpurnia could spank the children. She could punish them. She could impose, you know, penalties on them. And all with Atticus's approval. Remember what Scout said earlier in the book? Calpurnia always won, and Atticus always took her side.
I was confused about that. He's like, you said no white person has ever taken a black person's side, like ever, and then he did that.
All right. So this, what I just told you there, that can maybe give you a little insight, a little clue into the thinking of Atticus. Atticus thought differently than almost everybody else in town, everybody else in the South. Okay? Again, he was willing to accept that Calpurnia was his equal. Had the same privileges, same rights as what he did. All right, we got this character named Dill. Charles Baker Harris was his name. All right, Dill. Dill is a character, and he gets Scout and Jim in all kinds of situations, and he has a big imagination. He's just full of life. I don't know how else to put it. Very just full of life. All right, we have a character. I hope I don't run it. Can you see this?
Yes.
Okay. All right, we have this character named Boo Radley. real name is Arthur, but people call him Boo. And I suppose they call him Boo. It's probably a name given by children. Call him Boo because what kind of creature makes them sound Boo? A ghost, right. And remember they said, he says in that first chapter, a malevolent phantom lived in that house. An evil ghost, an evil spirit. What the kids in town considered anyway. Lived in that house, and that was Boo Radley. All right, the backstory for Boo Radley is when he was a teenager, he hung around with the wrong crowd. They got in trouble. The rest of the crowd got sent off to the state industrial school, the vocational school. They learned a trade, so they'd get a nice job. They got fed. They got housed. However, Boo's dad did not let him go, and he kept Boo locked up in his own house for the next 15 years. No one ever saw Boo for the next 15 years.
What?
After that, yes, sir.
What if his dad kept him in the house because we know he has mental illnesses, or
Possibly, yeah.
we think. So what if his dad kept him in the house because he didn't want that mental illness to go outside?
Because he didn't want what?
Because he didn't want like the mental illness that guy has to like.
To be known?
Like ruin their family name.
Oh,
If
yeah,
you're saying
right.
they're rich, I mean,
Yeah.
people obviously did at one point think of them higher. I mean, now they don't because everyone's scared of them, I guess. But they did at one point. They were above, and they don't want their name to be messed up.
I mean, the Radleys were outcast in town to begin with. They don't associate, never did associate with people.
Even when they were rich and like.
Yes, all right.
Or he just doesn't want Arthur to go through like all the ridicule that I assume they.
Yes, good point. Good, yeah, good point.
Wait, you said that he didn't have a job. Like, then where did he go?
Who?
The dad.
Mr. Radley?
The
Yeah.
town.
He just stayed in the house.
Yeah. No, but he was like, oh yeah, I saw him walking down the street.
Well, it said he walked the town every day. He's back within a half an hour.
Oh.
All right?
To get food and.
Yeah, he'd
Yeah,
get groceries
locked him up
sometimes. Yeah.
During
With the
that.
brown bag.
All right, Maddie, real quick.
Did Bob Yule have anything to do with the Yule on the chart?
That's the same one. Yeah. When I said Yule's on that chart for society, that's Bob Yule. Yeah, and his family. Yes,
So the
Chance.
Is
What
their
if
own
the big
social class?
secret is he was doing the like oldest
No,
Salem
it's
thing and
like
like poking
zero
apart in
class,
his brain,
class,
trying to
and
figure out what's going on.
Ah, okay.
Nobody.
Well, that's a stretch. All right. All right. So anyway, Boo Radley, and then
Calvin, he is
to
a
finish the backstory on Boo, Boo was in his house one day with his family, and his dad walked by, and Boo stabbed his father in the leg with a pair of scissors that he was cutting pictures out of a newspaper with, and then Boo just quietly pulled the scissors out, wiped the blood off of him, and kept on cutting.
But also,
And-
if I'm locked in a basement for 15 years, I would also.
Well, he wasn't in a basement yet. That
Oh,
was-
okay, that's okay. He was
Yeah.
locked in a house though. Still, like he was locked in a house.
Yeah, he was
for
not allowed to
15
go
years.
outside. Yeah,
No sunlight, no interaction with
that
anyone
would
except for your
drive
parents.
people crazy.
So
Yes.
maybe not.
It
Maybe
would.
not even
I
mental
just don't
illness, just, like-
understand how, like, casually, nothing happened after that. The dad wasn't just like, what the heck?
Maybe he knew he was. Maybe like, he was expecting it.
Well,
Just,
I mean, again,
come walking
but
back.
you have to understand the thinking of families back then. People had felt a tremendous responsibility for their family, regardless of what the family did. They were going to take care of them.
I never understood
Okay,
that.
so anyway, the people in town and the sheriff wanted to lock Boo up. They put him in the courthouse basement where it was all damp and moldy, and they said, get him out of here, Boo's going to die. So they brought him back home, and no one has seen Boo since. All right,
Except for 15 years later, didn't he come out? Or no, that was.
no,
when he
that
came
was
out.
15 years, and then he
So
stabbed.
it's still not coming out of the house. It's brother, man.
Yes, right.
Did he?
Mr. Radley's brother,
Nathan?
Mr. Radley's son,
Is
older
that
son.
who it is? Nathan?
Yeah,
Nathan Radley, yeah, he is Boo's older brother.
And he just died because
Mr. Radley?
because
Yeah.
of the
Yeah, Mr. Radley died of some illness. It doesn't tell us what it was, but the house was quarantined, and then he died.
Was Boo inside the house?
Yeah, how
Yes,
did Boo not get it?
maybe he stayed away from, I don't know.
Dude,
Don't know. Don't know. All right, and then the last person that I want you to be aware of is Dill's aunt. Okay, as we were reading, we kind of discovered that Dill does not have a father. It doesn't tell us what happened to his father. it was the Great Depression. We could assume maybe our first assumption was maybe the mother and father had split, they divorced or whatever. But it could also be it was the Great Depression and Dill's father just could have run away. That happened frequently when men couldn't care for their families. A lot of them become hobos, hop trains and go from one town to another trying to find a job. So, all right, any last questions for you guys?
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
What are gypsies and hobos like the same thing?
No.
Isn't a
Gypsies?
gypsy
What's the
like
difference?
like
Are
the
you
people
dumb?
who wear the skirts?
Gypsies
and
is
stuff?
like people from like a certain region. Like, I don't know what that
Really?
region
I
It's
thought it was
Eastern
people
Europe.
who, like,
Gypsies generally
never
come from
had-
generally have come from Eastern Europe,
Yeah.
and they have a bad reputation of being thieves
Yeah.
and deceptive people, and you can never leave anything out, and they would.
Who are the people that wear the
Yeah.
skirts and like the?
Those are
No,
belly
they
dancers.
usually
And they, like,
they
read-
practice music to make money because they never
Yes,
have a home.
right.
They keep on
Are
like
you-
in the town.
Are you talking about what's it called?
I don't know.
Where they read the
Fortune
crystal
teller.
balls?
I
Yes,
know.
yes, and
Yeah.
gypsies would do that. They'd be fortune tellers as
Okay,
well.
yeah, that's what I was talking
All
about.
right, now hobos were just they
They're
were
homeless.
without a job, and they were actually most of them said they were trying to go from one place to another to find a job.
Wait, have you
Twilight
never
Zone with the
seen-
hobo and like the
All right,
the
well,
clown and the
Ken,
dancing.
we'll catch you on the next round, and hope you enjoyed this.
Catch on the flip-flop.